It's about to go down. Welcome to Reel Filmmaking. My name is Corey Tindall, and today we're doing a movie story structure breakdown. I think one of the best ways that we can learn how to tell better stories is to take stories that we know and love and break them down to find out exactly what is going on in them. So today we're going to break down Spider-Man 2, which is one of my favorite films. If you've been on this channel, you've heard me talk at length about this. But we're going to break down the story structure of Spider-Man 2, see what's going on, and that will help inform us as we hope to tell better stories here on Reel Filmmaking and as you are growing in your filmmaking journey. So without further ado, let's get... Why can't you just leave me alone? I don't even want to do this now. Act 1 contains the exposition and the inciting incident, and within all of that we get a lot of stuff in the exposition that sets up who Spider-Man is, his world, his relationships with other people, and we get the inciting incident that really drives the whole point of the movie forward. So in the exposition, we see, even like with the fun hook where Peter is delivering pizzas and stuff, that there's financial strain in his life. He can't afford to pay his rent, he doesn't have enough money. We see as he arrives home for his birthday, which he forgot about, his relationships with all these different people are very stressed. And in the midst of this exposition, we get a lot of the subplots that are being set up for the film. He sees his Aunt May, which that sets up a subplot. He sees Harry, the tension between him and Harry about like Spider-Man killing his father, Peter taking Spider-Man's picture. That sets up the tension for their subplot. Peter and MJ, their relationship of she loves him and he loves her, but now she's dating somebody else and she's kind of moved on. It sets up the stage for all these different subplots that will help to drive the main plot of the film forward. We continue on, and Peter, when he saw Harry, Harry mentioned Otto Octavius, and Peter says, hey, I'm writing a paper on him. And again, one of the things, Peter is in a hard stage of life. He's balancing being a superhero with college studies and stuff like that, and Peter's writing a paper, so he's like, I'd love to meet Otto. And Peter gets to meet Otto Octavius. Otto shares his brilliant scientific mind with Peter. They talk a whole bunch. Peter meets Otto's wife. There's all these great things. Otto talks about using science for the betterment of mankind. He basically kind of feels this father figure role that Peter hasn't had since Uncle Ben. This sets up the stage for main plot leading into Otto Octavius and what happens with him and his relationship with Peter throughout the rest of the movie. So in the midst of this, we also get another subplot that's presented, which is the fact that Peter is losing his spider powers, or something weird is going on with them. Like, he can't fully control them like he normally does, and he's swinging around and he just falls and something weird is going on. So we get all these different pieces set up within the first 20 to 30 minutes of the film. So we've got all of our exposition, and we've got our inciting incident, which is Peter meeting Otto Octavius for the first time, building lots of rapport with him, and Otto talking about, hey, you should come to the demonstration tomorrow about this nuclear energy thing. It's gonna be great, you're gonna see all this stuff. In Act 2, the way that I've broken it down is I think there's 3 parts in this film within Act 2. Act 2 is usually the biggest chunk of a film. So Peter goes to Otto's demonstration. Things seem to be going well, but then things aren't going so well. And Spider-Man has to show up and save the day to shut down the nuclear reaction that Otto has been working on. In all of that, that is the genesis of Dr. Octopus that we'll see later on in the film. After the fusion reaction goes bad and we're introduced to Dr. Octopus, we see Spidey and Doc Ock face off at the bank heist. Otto is robbing to get more money to build his fusion reactor again, and Peter tries to stop him. We see in their fight even more of the escalation of Peter not having control of his spider powers. From there we see some more development in the Peter and MJ subplot, where Peter gets asked to go to this gala for like the space program and take pictures. Lo and behold, to find out that the famed astronaut has MJ as his date and proposes to her while at said event, so sending Peter into another existential spiral. While at this party, we also get more plot development in regards to Harry and Peter's relationship, because Harry has been humiliated. Otto cost him lots of money because Harry's company was sponsoring him. And so now Harry's just out for blood. He wants Spider-Man. Peter takes pictures of him. They kind of get into a scuffle. continuing like the degrading of their friendship. In the midst of all of this, like I've said, there's the different instances where Peter is not fully in control of his spider powers, and he doesn't know what's going on. He's also grappling with this existential reality of, to be Spider-Man, there's a cost, and he doesn't want to do it. He just wants a normal life. He wants to be able to have normal relationships and to be connected with people, but he can't. He goes and he shares with Aunt May the truth about, the somewhat truth about that it's not her fault that Uncle Ben died. It's his, because he wasn't fully honest with them, and he was actually doing something else. He wasn't at the library, and he could have stopped the person that ended up killing Uncle Ben. Finally, wrapping up the first part of Act 2, that culminates after Peter has confessed to Aunt May and has had all this relational struggle with MJ and Harry, that he decides that he's going to be Spider-Man no more. He has this conversation with Uncle Ben in the car, this kind of flashback thing, and Uncle Ben's saying, with great power comes great responsibility. The things you're talking about make me sad. And Peter's saying, I don't want to do this anymore. With that, we get the Spider-Man No More sequence, when he leaves his costume in a trash can and he walks away. That kind of closes out part 1 of Act 2. Moving us to part 2 of Act 2, which really is a lot of rising action. We get some mid-climax action in here too, but we're still building towards the ultimate climax of the film. So in part 2, we see more of Peter's existential crisis. He chooses not to be Spider-Man at the end of part 1, and Peter starts to see how this affects New York City with him not being Spider-Man anymore. In wrestling through that, like, we kind of get a funny sequence of him not being Spider-Man. Like, I love that the raindrops are falling on my head. But at the end of that, Peter goes and saves this girl from a burning building. And he does it without his spider powers, but kind of with his spider powers, he doesn't know if he fully has them. And there's just this tugging in him of, he doesn't know if he should still be Spider-Man, but there's part of him where it's hard to just see a problem and not do anything about it. The Aunt May subplot gets picked back up, and Peter goes to talk to her. She's moving, her house is being repossessed, all this stuff, and this is the first time they've talked to each other since Peter told her the somewhat truth about how Uncle Ben died. And Aunt May forgives him, and they talk, and she says this line, I believe there's a hero in all of us, and sometimes to do what's right, we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most, even our dreams. So in that statement, in that sentence, Peter and Aunt May's relationship is solidified, and that helps to push Peter towards the idea of returning to Spider-Man. And then we have the funny sequence of, my back, I'm back, my back, it's great. I love it. Then after that, we have continuing Harry's whole thing with Otto, and Otto goes to Harry and says, I need this particular metal to do the fusion reactor, and Harry's like, I'll give it to you, I'll give you the tritium, I need you to get Spider-Man for me, because Harry is now he's in full force to get Spider-Man. So Otto says, okay, I'll find him, how do I do that? And Harry says, Peter, talk to Peter. And this is the part of the film where these subplots, because they're done so well, start to bleed into each other. You've got Harry and Peter, and you've got Otto and Peter, and you've got Harry and Spider-Man, and MJ and Peter, and all of these things are going to start to weave together here as we get halfway through Act 2 and as we're going into Act 3. And so that's when you know, like, you have a really well thought out main plot and then subplots that support it. What's going on over there? I don't know. We have a sequence with Peter getting coffee with MJ and telling her that he does love her, but he can't be with her. And in the midst of this, Doc Ock shows up and kidnaps Mary Jane, and this is one of the things that forces Peter back into being Spider-Man. He still is on the fence about whether he should be Spider-Man, but this is the thing that forces him to go save the woman he loves. He has to be Spider-Man. He needs Spider-Man in this situation to help. So then, we get this mid-climax scene, I would say, of Act 2, which is the awesome train fight sequence. I love this sequence so much. It is incredible. I watched it the other day. Still holds up. Still really good. So we get this train fight sequence with Ock and Peter ends up saving everyone on the train, but in the end, Ock knocks him out and takes him to Harry. With that, Ock gets the tritium, and he is back to build his machine and do all this stuff. Now we're back to the Harry and Peter subplot, Harry unmasks Spider-Man to find out that it's Peter, and he's crushed and he doesn't know what to do. And Peter says, Harry, there's more things going on here than just you and me. He took MJ, he's gonna blow up the city, what do we do? And so now that subplot is weaving into the main plot, and now Spider-Man has to stop Dr. Octopus. That brings us to the end of part 2 in Act 2, and now we're moving to part 3 of Act 2 and getting very close to Act 3. And remember, Act 2 houses a lot. It houses all the rising action, it handles a lot of the subplot development, and it handles in most stories the climax of the film. So then, Peter goes to stop Ock, to save MJ. There's a revelation to Dr. Octopus that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and through their relationship, Ock remembers how he told Peter that you do it for the good of mankind. You use science for the good of mankind. And he sees himself as a monster now, controlled by these creations that he's made. And so in a self-sacrifice, he's able to drown his nuclear reaction, and Peter is able to save MJ. And so now that the main plot has come to a climax, all these different threads are starting to tie together, and now we're entering into Act 3. So in Act 3, we get a lot of falling action. And falling action, a good way to think of it is, it's basically what happens in the climax changes the whole story. You can't go back. So MJ knows that Spider-Man is Peter. Like, that changes so many things. Harry knows that Spider-Man is Peter. That changes things. Doc Ock sacrificed himself. He's out of the picture. There's all these things that happen because of the climax that now the characters kind of have to grapple with and figure out. For Harry's subplot, he's trying to figure out what to do because his best friend is Spider-Man, and he stumbles upon all of the Green Goblin instruments that his dad created. And so we're left kind of with this subplot of like, what's next for Harry? With Peter, we see that he's chosen to be Spider-Man again, and so he's kind of trying to figure out like, what do I do now that all this is over? I have to give up being a normal person. And we see the MJ Peter subplot come to a close when Mary Jane decides to not marry the astronaut and chooses Peter. And says, I can make my own choice, like you have to let me make my own choice and I choose you. And so in all this falling action, we see these characters kind of wrestling with what happened in the climax and where they're going to go from here. Which finally brings us to our resolution, where we see Peter choose to become Spider-Man fully again. And then, boom, we're here, we're done. Finito, the end. So that's Spider-Man 2, and so by breaking down this movie into these different parts, it was even a challenge for me. I've seen this movie so many times, but to think about it and like, what are all the different subplots that are happening, how do those affect the main plot, all the different things that happen, it better help me to just even understand why this movie works so well. And I think that's because the main plot is so well supported by these subplots that all tie into each other. They're not left in open pieces where it's like, that didn't even make any sense, but they're all helping to define who Spider-Man is, help us understand his world, and when we get to the climax, all of these subplots make sense. They all pay off. They all end up in the same place, and that's how you know you have good writing in your story. I hope you guys enjoyed that story structure breakdown of Spider-Man 2. A little bit longer today, but it's so good. It's good to like flex those muscles, you know, the story muscles. So if you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, like the channel, subscribe to the channel if you want more videos about like tech stuff, making movies, but then also like the storytelling elements, thematic stuff, all that goodness. And until next time, get out there and keep making movies and watching movies. And I'll see you next time on Reel Filmmaking.